Hello, tea friends. This is Barb Gully, Barb's Tea Service, and we are back in the studio for our latest podcast, courtesy on TV Studios. And this is our 19th podcast.
We're rolling.
We are. So, I'd like to introduce our studio engineer, Arm Candy,
Here I am.
and co-host, Chris
Yes.
Gully. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Do you know what today is? What holiday?
What
today
holiday? Is it stay in bed day? No.
I'd like one of those,
Okay.
actually, but no.
Oh,
It is International Podcast Day.
amazing.
I know. You know what? And it's kind of interesting that we are in the studio
Yeah.
on this very day because we
Yeah.
typically don't come to the studio on Mondays.
We're not very observant people, are we?
I think, well, we have a schedule, but
Yeah.
we've been
Yeah.
here and
We
there.
had to mix it up.
So this is International Podcast
Yes.
Day,
Right.
September 30th.
Uh-huh.
And we're doing a lot this week with podcasts.
Yes.
And this is day one.
Right.
So we're kicking it off, even though it's just a day. It's probably podcast week for us. Anyway,
Yep.
as noted
Mm-hmm.
by the National Day calendar,
Mm-hmm.
this is how they describe International Podcast Day.
Right.
It dedicates September 30th to promote the growing media of podcasts and the technologies surrounding it. Around the world,
Uh-huh.
people listen to their favorite podcasts to
Yes.
keep up with the latest news, technology, entertainment,
Wow.
or information. I hope we fall somewhere
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Sure. Why not?
kind of taking some liberties
Right.
there. But I think I know what our favorite podcast
I
is.
think I know too.
Okay.
All right. Very good.
It's Barb's Tea Service
It
podcast.
is. It's amazing.
And
I love it.
Good. And this is, people can find this.
Yes.
Various ways.
Yep, SoundCloud,
Yep.
which is posted there. 2 YouTube channels, either on Orion on TV's channel or Barb's Tea Service channel,
Right.
and then it also appears on the Apple Podcast.
Right.
Search for it.
Lots of places.
Lots
to
of
find
places,
it.
yep.
So that's exciting.
It is.
Okay. So now we're a little rusty because
We've been doing other things.
other things. We've been on another few weeks hiatus.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And we were on the road,
Mm-hmm.
or more aptly, we were on the water.
We were on the water.
We are. We're kind of looking out in September
Uh-huh.
because in Michigan the weather's been,
It can be dicey.
it can be dicey, but we've been getting this long
Yeah,
summer
right.
instead of
It
an early
never
fall.
ends.
So we were able to take advantage of being outside a lot
Yeah.
more and on the boats.
Yes.
So we were up north with family for a few weekends, and we
Yep.
used the pontoon.
Yes,
And then we did something very different for us.
we did.
We chartered a sailboat
Yes.
on the Grand Traverse Bay,
Uh-huh.
and we went with our expert sailing friends,
Mhm.
Rick and Carol.
Yep.
They chartered the waters for us.
Exactly.
So then we went to the Leelanau Peninsula, and we went all the way to the end where
Northport.
Northport.
Yep.
Okay. And there was a lighthouse
Yes.
there.
Mhm.
We got to tour that.
Yes.
And then we made a few other stops.
Right.
So scenic up there.
Went to Fishtown.
Went to Fishtown,
Yep.
and around Fishtown,
Yep. hmm
I went to the Leelanau bookstore.
Yes.
So all of this stuff inspired the theme for today's podcast.
Yes.
And that was, how did England
Yep.
get their tea
Uh-huh.
in the time of Jane Austen?
Yes.
This is a question that came
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Well, we
You
were
thought-
kind of, having that experience, and then things kind of change, and they don't change. We would call it today. What was the supply chain?
Yes.
They would just call it the tea trade.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the same factors, and as you kind of started researching, it's really quite interesting about how things like this drive technology, and your process of getting things, and trade, and how you pay for it, and
Exactly.
and getting it to market as quickly as possible.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Some of those things you just take for granted.
Yes, yeah.
So,
But somebody has to invent all of that the first time.
right, right. So we're going to talk about that. And then if we have time,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to talk about a couple of really neat additions to our Pemberley Pines Tea Garden.
Yes, one of our favorite places.
One of our absolute favorite places.
Right.
And then also a cool, I'm
Yes.
doing air quotes here,
Uh-huh.
a cool trend in home design, home interior
I
design.
wonder what that could be.
Mm,
I think we're going to find out.
we are.
All right.
But first, tea. Okay, so today I mentioned that I stopped at the Leland bookstore.
Yes.
And they carried this tea.
Uh-huh.
It's Jane Austen tea.
Right.
Okay, can you
Uh-huh.
see that
I
on
can.
the camera?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is a collection from Simpson and Bale.
Mhm.
They do literary teas.
Uh-huh.
And this came recommended
Uh-huh.
at the bookstore. So I thought, well, let's try this. It fits really
Yeah.
great with our theme today because
Yeah.
we want to talk about how tea came to England
Yeah.
in Jane Austen's time.
Right.
And so I thought, well, hey, let's try a little bit of this.
Very good. Now, Jane Austen, she would purchase her tea in London at a place that still exists today, and that is Twinings, right?
Twinings,
Yep.
right. And that was where the Austens preferred to get their tea. So, tasting that.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
At first, for some reason, I had it in my mind that we were doing an Earl Grey, and I kind of had myself set up for that. And it's not an Earl Grey like at all.
No.
It's a black tea. It's got some additions, and it's got a kind of a minty aftertaste, not unpleasant.
Uh-huh.
And so there's some mint in there, I'm thinking.
Yes,
Okay.
they're spearmint.
Okay, spearmint. Oh, that's
Are
what
you
it is.
picking up anything else?
Kind of some florals in there, I would say.
So, okay,
yeah, but the mint
the
really kind of
is-
comes
is
across.
strong.
Yeah.
And it has a little bit of lavender
Yes. Okay.
and some vanilla.
All right.
Kind of that creamy.
Yeah.
taste,
There
right?
you go. Yeah.
And we do grow spearmint
We do.
at the tea garden.
We do.
So we could work
Yeah.
on something. But something you're always interested in is
Yes.
what the tea would pair with.
So what would we have with this? And I would say so this is a I don't see this because of the mintiness. I don't see this. You would have like with an entree or a main meal, maybe lamb or something like
yes.
that. Maybe,
right.
you know.
Uh-huh.
But I would say this would go well with like a pastry, a scone with some fruit. Would be a kind of a nice repast.
Okay. I'm not a fan of melons, but this would pair with melons.
Yes. Okay.
Strawberries.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't want to give away too much about a future podcast. We're going to be talking about a really interesting, fun pairing that we're going to be doing
Yes.
very shortly.
All right.
And it's exciting. But
All right.
anyway, so
Right.
we're talking about our Jane Austen tea.
All right. Very good.
I like it. Okay. So, all right. So let's get to the shipping. Literally
Yes.
shipping,
Okay.
right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So we were doing a lot of, as I mentioned, we were on the boat a lot
Yeah,
the past few weeks. We were on our pontoon,
Mhm.
which is really just a
You said it's
a floating couch.
a floating couch. It's the best kind of couch.
It is very nice. But then we had to work a little bit more when we were doing this sailboat in Grand Traverse Bay.
Right.
And, well, we didn't really work too hard.
So it was it was a 38-foot single-masted sailboat, and it was built in Costa Rica, I believe, according to the captain.
Okay.
So back in the 90s, and it was very well appointed. A lot of nice woodwork around it. It was great.
It was
Yeah.
a beautiful boat, and we again had a great day.
Mm-hmm.
So our friends were doing the steering,
Right.
and the captain was working the sails.
Yep. Yep.
And
And we were working hard to stay out of the way.
we were, and we do that really well.
Yes, that's
I'm
right.
kind of proud of us
Yeah.
for that. But so one thing though, I noticed that you were looking at, I don't know if they call it a dashboard
Right.
on a boat.
Right. They got gauges and whatnot.
Right.
So I was kind of looking at direction and depth, and then they would kind of give an approximate speed.
And how fast was that going? I mean,
Yeah. We had very good wind. They were very consistent, and sometimes it would really kind of puff up, and we'd heel over. So, in general, according to the speed gauge, we were running between 5 and 7 knots
okay.
per hour.
Okay. And that was with really almost perfect conditions,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So, believe it or not,
Yes.
that speed is what the speed would have been for these,
Yep.
the first trade merchant ships
Yep.
in England.
Crossing the ocean. Yeah.
Crossing the ocean. And
It's kind of a walking speed.
I know. And if you're bringing in,
Yeah.
foreign goods,
Yeah.
it's going to take a while. And that's
Yeah.
sort of what was happening here.
Right.
So in 1600,
Right.
we have Queen Elizabeth I.
Right.
She grants a royal charter
Right.
to the East India Company,
Mm-hmm.
and they get a monopoly on all the trade coming into England.
Right.
Okay. And this warrant that they got, it sort of lessened as
Yeah. As time went on.
the time went
yeah,
on, and
yeah.
they eventually lost their monopoly in
Right.
1834. But before that,
Yep.
they pretty much
Yep. They ran the show.
they ran the show.
Right.
So tea comes to England in the mid 17th century.
Right.
And we've talked about this before.
Right.
Charles II,
Mm-hmm.
he brings his wife, who's from Portugal, Catherine.
Yep. Big trading nation.
Big trading nation. In fact, they, along with the Dutch, the Portuguese were one of the first to bring tea to Europe.
Yes.
Okay, so she brings her tea chest to
Mhm.
London.
And people said, "What's that?"
It was kind of a curiosity,
Yeah.
but she really helped
Yep.
add to the popularity of tea in England.
Right.
Add a little panache, a little
Yep.
status.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, she was referred to as the first tea drinking queen.
Okay.
And she was praised by a lot of people
Yeah.
because they thought there was too much
Yeah.
imbibing
Yes.
of alcohol.
Yes.
And in fact, according to one of the books that James Norwood Pratt wrote,
Right.
he says that the breakfast for Queen Elizabeth I
Yes.
consisted of
Uh huh.
meat,
Uh huh.
bread, and a gallon of beer.
Wow, that's a breakfast of champions or something.
Kind of interesting. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not even 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Although I would say the beer was probably so. We talked about this. Water was not very good back in the day. It was fairly unsanitary. So
Oh, right. Right.
So they would ferment with various grains, to introduce alcohol of some level to basically sterilize the water. So
Right.
the alcohol level was not, was probably fairly low. But I'm sure you,
even so.
after your breakfast, you might have something of a buzz. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think a
Yeah.
gallon.
Yeah.
So anyway, this, so with the tea kind of took care of that too, because
Right. Yeah, because you're
using
boiling
hot-
a tea.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right.
So now that we have this East India Trading Company
Mm-hmm.
going to China,
Right.
getting the tea,
Right.
they had this monopoly, so they really didn't have to worry about competition.
Right.
So they really went more for economy than expediency.
Right. Right.
So they had these great big ships
Right.
with these big hulls,
Right.
so they could carry a lot of cargo.
Uh-huh.
But they were slow.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing so they had these big hulls, but they had this thing they called square rigging.
Yes.
Now,
So-
there's a sailor term.
Right. So, modern sail, so you have the triangular, sails on modern. And so basically that sail is kind of almost acting as a wing. And you'll notice when we were on the boat, we would heel over when the wind, and then we would really take off. Square sailing is basically you're depending on pretty much, following the wind.
Right.
And so that's where we get the term, the trade wind. So, you would want to have a following wind to kind of push you along, and they weren't much maneuverable, after that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it was at the cost of
Right.
getting the tea back
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
So just to give you an example of a timeline.
Right.
These ships would leave England
Mm-hmm.
in January.
Right.
They go around the Cape of Good Hope,
Right.
around Africa,
Right.
get to China
Mhm.
in September of that year.
Right.
And that's just
Yeah.
the first leg.
Right.
They got to come back.
Yeah.
And that would take almost another year.
Right.
So, the tea wasn't really
Fresh.
fresh.
Right.
And again, they're still going about the speed we did
Yep.
in our sailboat
Right.
in the Traverse Bay. So even all conditions, everything being great,
Right.
your fresh harvest tea
Yeah.
is already
At least a year.
at least a year.
Right.
And when we talked earlier about in podcasts about expiration date,
Right.
then we said that some black teas
Right.
can hang in there for up to 3 years
Under optimal conditions.
under optimal conditions. So you're figuring by the time this probably reaches Twinings and
Yeah.
Jane Austen,
Right.
it's already 2/3
Yeah.
of the way to its expiration date.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was also a time when a lot of the importers went to prefer black teas,
Right.
even though popularity, they like the green tea better.
Right. Right.
But the black tea, we know it has the longest oxidation period.
Yeah. It's more stable.
It's more stable. It's
Right.
not as prone to mildew,
Right.
and it hangs on to its flavor a little bit more.
Right.
So
There you go.
there you go. So then we have East India Company losing its monopoly in 1834,
Right.
and things started to change.
Right.
So this brought in the rise of the clipper ships.
And that was these are interesting boats.
They are. They're smaller,
Right.
but they're faster.
Right.
And they have sails that
So that again, kind of it would be more angular. They would have more of the triangular. They would have a combination of square sails and triangulars. I'm not a sailor guy, so don't ask me to explain it. But basically, it would do whatever they could do to catch either a following wind or be able to attack into the wind or whatever. So they weren't as delayed by contrary winds, and they were a lot more efficient.
Yes. So they couldn't carry as much,
Right.
but they could go a lot faster.
Right.
So anybody now who has a clipper ship
Right.
and a little bit of silver
Right.
can be in the tea trade.
Because the Chinese preferred silver.
That's right. For
Yep.
foreign, yes, they did. They
Yep.
preferred the currency. So now suddenly we've got all these people out there with their clipper ships,
Yep.
and the big deal is
Right.
to be the first one back with the tea.
And it was a competition.
It was a competition, and this gave way to these clipper
Yep.
races,
Right.
clipper ship races. So these guys could go up to 20 knots.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's
a good clip.
they're going fast, and because they could go fast, they couldn't bring in as much cargo, but they also didn't have to have as much crew.
Right.
So it could be 25
Right.
to 50 guys.
Yep.
That's all they needed.
And they could turn around inventory a lot quicker.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Took half the time
Right.
a round trip
Mhm.
as the East India
Right.
Company big ships.
Mhm.
So now it's this big competition to
Right.
get the tea back as soon as possible.
Right.
And this went to in the mid 1800s.
Uh-huh.
It evolved into this huge event,
Right.
the clipper races.
There was a lot of media interest.
There was. So there was a premium for the first tea that came on.
Right.
People would pay more for this.
Exactly.
And it got just a lot of excitement and anticipation, not just from the dealers,
Mhm.
the tea dealers, but the general public.
Yes.
This was like a
Yeah.
big derby race.
And they would bet on these things.
They would bet. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
So what they would do, the crowds would gather. There'd be telegrams being
Right.
sent
Uh-huh.
at
Yep.
when these ships would make certain marks.
Yep.
So they kind of had an idea.
Yep.
And then some of the dealers would stay at nearby hotels.
Yes.
And some would even sleep on the docks.
Yes.
Because they didn't want to miss it. They wanted to be the first ones there when
It was the thing.
it was the thing. So when the first ships came in,
Right.
they would unload their cargo, go right to the tasting rooms.
Right.
These dealers would taste it, bid
Yep.
on it,
Uh-huh.
sales were made, and then it would go all over England,
Yes.
just be exported
Right.
or transported all over.
Right.
So there was not just prestige in being the first boat there.
Right.
We won,
Yep.
but there's also
Yep.
often a monetary
A
reward,
bonus, perhaps.
a bonus.
All right.
Could be up to 500 pounds.
Right. Back in the 1850s.
Yeah.
That's when it was real money.
So if we're translating this to
Uh-huh.
current day pounds and dollars,
Right.
then we have it would be about 84,000 pounds, which is about $112,000
To be split.
among 25 to 50 people. So
Right.
a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
change.
It was incentive.
Yeah, I mean, what would you do with an extra 25, 4,500?
I'd blow it on tea.
More tea.
Yeah.
So, and then finally,
Mhm.
the end of the clipper ship
Yep.
trade comes because in 1869,
Dun, dun, dun. We got the Suez Canal.
the Suez Canal is
And it,
opened.
yeah, so people didn't have to go around Africa anymore. They could just go through the Mediterranean and then around the Red Sea, and that probably cut the travel time in half at least.
It did, and these steamships had
Oh,
sort of the
right.
bonus of both their predecessors.
Right.
So they're fast and they can hold a lot.
Right.
So they could go up to 25 knots,
Yes.
which is quite an improvement.
Yes.
So I think it's a good, when you ask that question, I thought that was, one of those things, again, you take for granted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, how did that supply
Right.
chain, and we see things in the news about
Right.
how these things can,
Yeah.
there can be things that affect your supply chain
Right.
Quickly.
Yeah.
But we're very fortunate in that we don't have to wait that long for tea.
No.
In fact, we can order from Amazon today, and
Yeah.
it could be on our front porch tomorrow.
It's we live in a golden age.
We do. And I think, though, we don't have the fanfare,
No,
perhaps.
no.
We don't stay up all night waiting for that package.
Maybe we should.
Sleep on the porch.
That's right.
Okay.
No, that would be weird.
That would be weird. Okay, so in the short time that we have left, I just want to talk real quickly about a couple of additions to our Pemberley Pines
Yes.
tea
One
garden.
of our favorite topics.
One of our favorite topics, and a shout out to Glass Up Your Garden owner and creator Kathy Pierce.
Uh-huh.
And we had a bit of serendipity last month.
Yes.
In August, we were up near Lexington
Right.
for astronomy weekend.
Right.
We thought we'd go into Lexington, walk around, have lunch.
Yep.
Turns out they have their annual art fair.
That was great. Highly recommended.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Yep.
And as we were going past this booth, we saw this Glass Up Your Garden, and we recognized
Yeah,
the product
some of the pieces. Yep.
because she does, among other things, she does glass flowers
Right.
and
Mhm.
uses dishes, etc. But she also has a collection of teapots.
Right.
And she has them on these nice copper poles. You can
Right.
put them in your flower bed.
Right.
And then little crystals
Yeah.
go
Right.
down the spout, so it
Yeah.
looks like it's pouring tea.
Yeah. And we have that.
And we were gifted that by our sailor friends.
That's right.
So they come in handy.
yeah, they do. Yeah.
So anyway, when we saw this, we go, oh,
Yep.
we love your stuff, and we wanted to get something else.
Yep.
So you picked out something rather lovely.
A large ceramic flower that fits on a post, and it's one of the centerpieces that we have right now.
Right, and I like it because it's not what I call a shrinking violet,
No,
literally. It's
no.
bold.
Yep.
It stands up to all those trees and
Yep.
pines.
That's right.
So that I followed up with Kathy after we had planted that in our garden,
Mhm.
and I did a quick interview with her.
Right.
That's in one of our September blog stories.
Great.
Great. Okay. Another thing that we added to our garden
Mhm.
was peony seeds.
Yes. And why did we do that? Where did those come from?
Yes, not just run-of-the-mill
No.
peony seeds.
No.
We got this when we were in Vermont,
Uh-huh.
when we visited Hildene,
Right.
and that was the home of Robert Lincoln
After he downsized.
after he downsized
Yep.
to 8,000 square feet.
Yep.
So he is the son of Abraham Lincoln
The only surviving child that made it to adulthood.
that made it to adulthood.
Yep.
And this wasn't part of our presidential home
Right.
checklist, but I mean, this is about as presidential adjacent as you can get.
Yes.
So
Yep.
he worked for a couple presidents.
Yep.
He's the son of a president.
Yep.
And he was very successful.
Yeah. So
on
he
his own.
ran for a while. He ran the Pullman Railroad Car Company,
Right.
which
right,
was this is the golden age of railroad.
Right.
So he was a big deal.
right. He was.
Yep.
And so at Hildene, it's beautiful. It's so
Yeah.
scenic, you
Right.
know. And the interiors, the exteriors are
Yeah.
lovely.
Mhm.
But one thing that really struck me was this visual that they have outside of the
Oh,
front
yeah.
porch.
Mhm.
And it's a border,
Mhm.
in a square border of rocks.
Right.
And it outlines the perimeter of the log cabin that
Yep.
Abraham Lincoln was born in.
Yes.
And I don't know the exact size, but it's about the size of an average living room.
Yes. Yeah.
Or a den.
Right.
Not
right.
real big.
Yeah.
And so it shows this contrast of how far this family came
Right.
in a generation.
Exactly.
And this is up against the downsized home.
yeah.
Ugh,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went to the gift shop, and I love gift shops.
Yes.
So they had a lot of cool stuff, but they had these seeds,
Mm-hmm.
these peony seeds,
Yep.
and they come from the plant
Yep.
that Robert's daughter
Uh-huh.
gave to her mother.
Yes.
And these are heirloom seeds.
Yes.
So Rachel and I planted those seeds
Right.
in our garden. Said to plant them in the fall, and
Uh-huh.
then they'll come up in the spring.
Yeah, and we're waiting.
So we'll see if we get some history there.
Nice. All right. Can't wait.
Okay, so now how are we doing on time?
We got about 5 minutes.
Oh, excellent. So then I can talk about this cool,
Mhm.
doing my air quotes here
Yes.
again.
Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
This cool new trend in home interior design.
What crazy thing have you found now?
Fridgescaping.
What?
It's a hard thing to say without laughing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to get through this. But
Right. Yep.
fridgescaping.
Yep.
So this is the latest in home design. And I started seeing this show up on
Uh-huh.
a lot of my online magazines
Right.
and
Uh-huh.
think pieces.
Yeah.
Like home Good Housekeeping and BuzzFeed.
Yes.
But it was also in Washington Post.
Yeah.
A lot of places were picking this up.
Must have been a slow news day.
Fridgescaping. But it got over 6 million views
Right.
on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, what? I have to know what this is.
Right.
So all the sources point, typically, most of them gave credit to this blogger back in the day. In
Mhm.
2010,
Uh-huh.
she coined the term, her name's Kathy Perdue, she coined the term fridgescaping.
Yes.
But it's just recently that it took off because
Uh-huh.
we had this TikToker from the Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
She got thousands, hundreds of thousands of hits
Right.
from fans on her fridgescaping.
Amazing.
And she's only been doing it for less than a month.
Wow.
Pretty good. So
Yeah.
what is fridgescaping?
Yep.
Well, according to BuzzFeed, they gave us a definition. It's decorating and organizing the inside of your fridge to look stylistically and aesthetically pleasing.
Hmm.
Typically using things like baskets,
Mhm.
vases, pictures, and other items to achieve a desired theme.
Wow. So I'm gonna have to like buy a different kind of beer, I guess. It's gonna fit in.
Yes, we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
So
All right.
so this TikToker, she came up with themes. She did Beetlejuice.
Uh-huh.
She also did Bridgerton,
Bridgerton.
but she calls it Fridgerton.
Wow.
She's genius.
Is she? Is
Yeah,
she really?
well, so I thought I'd try it up north.
Yes.
Because our fridge up there is kind of a blank canvas.
Right.
We're pretty good about
Yeah,
keeping
cleaning it out. Yeah.
cleaning out. We don't let things accumulate. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and I'm going to do a moose theme
Uh-huh.
because it fits with the woods,
Yeah.
the wooded area. And also I have a lot of moose decor that was,
It was kismet.
yeah, it's easily within reach.
Right.
So I completed it in 15 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And it shows.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
All that time shows.
Yeah.
So what I did was I put fresh flowers in a moose teapot.
Uh-huh.
And then I put some meats and cheeses
Mm-hmm.
in
Artfully arranged.
artfully arranged in a moose bowl.
Uh-huh.
And that was set alongside the light beer
Yes.
and the NA beer.
Yes.
So it's starting to sound a little bit like Queen Elizabeth's breakfast.
Yeah. Wow.
Before Fridgescapes, we had her breakfast.
All right.
Okay. And then I topped all of that with a moose candle.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So,
Love it.
yeah, it's no Fridgerton, but what can be. Okay. So, anyway, the takeaway from this is I probably won't be doing that much. I think there's better use of my time.
Yes.
But it looks like we've got to wrap up.
Yep.
I want to let everybody know that all three of these stories, Hildine,
Yep.
Fridgescaping, and Glass Up Your Garden, are in our blogs for September.
Get it done.
And I think I hear that sound.
Oh, here we go.
All right. Thanks to On TV. Thanks to my wonderful co-host, Chris Gully. And I want to say, please stay tuned.
Very good. Okay.